I'm Dave Jaworski, or as Jay would refer to me, as his idiot brother. But I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out today, and it means the world to us. And I wanted to thank Christine and everybody else who's put this on and everything on. And me meeting everybody who I've met so far in San Francisco, it has been great, and everybody's been so nice and kind, and it's been an honor to meet Jay's San Francisco family. And I just want to give a toast to Jay. I know he's out there rocking out somewhere. Nastrovia. Nastrovia. And we encourage anybody who wants to say anything, please do. We love to hear the stories.
Hi. I am Lynn, and I am his little sister. And gosh, you know, it was brought up days ago that I should say something, and for days I've thought about it, and I'm like, what am I supposed to say? But when we were kids, I absolutely idolized my brother. I thought he was brilliant and so cool, and I wanted to be just like him. And I remember when I was about 10, I would tell everybody that we were twins. Despite the fact that we're 3 years difference in age, I'd be like, we're twins, and all of my friends were like, cool. And then you talk to like the older kids, and they'd be like, wait a minute, you're not twins, that's not possible. But it's what I said nonetheless, because that's how much I idolized him. And this being out here has meant the world to us, and walking through his streets with his people and eating, and it has been so good, and I'm very, very pleased to have been able to meet most of you. Thank you.
I do want to say this, and it has nothing to do with my camera and technical problems.
Get on that mic.
I am on the mic. I do want to say that, where are Jay's mom and dad?
Carl and Sylvia. Where are you?
I see you. I want you to know that you raised such a wonderful man, and I hope that when you visit here, and that you, and on this horrible reason to be here, that you can see what a great man your son was by every little bit of all of us. Because if you wanted to paint a picture of Jay Jaworski, all of us are the paint. There's a little of you, there's a little of you, there's a little of me. And all of those things are the things that Jay gravitated towards. And you know what? I liked your son. I liked him. We didn't really socialize, but I liked him. I honestly liked him. I effortlessly liked him. And to your great credit, and to your husband's great credit, that you raised a good young man who turned into a good older man, who turned into a good almost 50-year-old man. And I want to congratulate you on that, and I am so honored to meet you. I was so afraid of you last night. I was so afraid of you when you had the balloon, and I didn't want to talk to you. I did talk to your son, but I was afraid of you, and I'm not afraid of you anymore, by the way. But I do want to say, like, my God, what is Jay Jaworski all about? He's about the people in this room, and I'm so glad that you got to see what that means. You know what I mean? You get to see what that means, because every single person in this room is what Jay Jaworski is about, and you should be very proud of that. And I hope you are, and I'm honored to meet you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm 80. I was Jay's oldest niece. I was originally going to tell you guys, like, I don't know, this story about him and my sister, but then it, like, came to me a little bit later. I was like, you know what? No one would get anything out of that, because they all knew Jay, you know? They knew him for my Uncle Jay, not just Jay, I can't say that. But you guys all knew him for such an incredible person and for who he was. And I never got to see that. And, you know, coming here really, like, it's been so cool to me because I always pictured my Uncle Jay as kind of this raggedy old guy who, did nothing better with his time than play with his cats. And I'm coming here and everyone's telling me, he was such a great guy. He was so incredible. And I'm like, really? But everybody is given a certain amount of time on this world. And the only reason Jay's time was cut short is because he had not only just lived one life, but he had lived 10 lives in one. And he didn't wait on anybody. If he wanted to sprint ahead of the crowd, he would. If he wanted to fall back and be the last 20 people, he would. And I think that was such an incredible thing. He truly broke free and was just himself. And I wish and I hope that one day I can possibly be like that. I don't want to follow by the rules. And that was kind of always what I idolized, going through my middle school years. And you guys have helped me come to realize, that's who my uncle was. He wasn't, this homeless guy who, lived out in San Francisco. He was... It was the beard, yeah, it was the beard. He was such an amazingly brilliant and undeniably talented person, and that I really appreciate it. So thank you for all of the support that I've got. Thank you for helping me see who my family member was that I never got to know.
Get up here, tell a story. So I was helping the volunteers do their thing at KUSF, and Jay was the music director. And everybody, this is before the MP3, right? So where would you go to get the new music? Your community radio station. And everybody here in the room, were the people who set the tone for the whole Bay Area, which set the tone for music around the world. And Jay was the man. Everybody wanted to get my band in your, can you add my band, please? So there was always obviously fights about that. Why didn't you add that band? So there was some big dust up, and I said to him, Jay, why don't you just add this band? They're pretty good. And he says, that's right, Wilson, they're pretty good. Do you know how many pretty good bands are out there? We only play excellent bands. And it was that commitment, it's funny, but it was actually a total and pure life commitment to, art as its own end and creative expression as its own end to make life better. And that's what he lived for. My brother met Jay, and we went to a couple of Hardly Strictly Bluegrasses, and I told him, and he's like, oh my, do you remember that guy Jay? And, he had all these stories suddenly, he'd only been out here twice, and he has said this thing about Jay always made sure that everybody else was having a good time too. And that was his credo is here's some joy, dude, take it. God damn it, or I'll rub it in your face.
Hi, I'm a longtime friend of Jay's, and I know him more as an activist. So I don't know how many of you know him from that side, but when KUSF went down and the school that had funded it did a lot of shenanigans, he was first in line in organizing and getting the rallies and getting the protest. And I'd already known him for years by that point, but he arm twisted me even though I don't live in San Francisco. He said, look, this is important, blah, blah, blah. So I showed up, and we're at City Hall, and we're protesting, and we got our little picket signs. And sure as shit, some of the supervisors of the city of San Francisco came out, and they already knew Jay. I don't know how they knew Jay, but he was just Jay. And obviously they were like, yeah, whatever, we're behind you, dude. And they protested with us. And that's Jay in a nutshell. He just everybody loved him. And that is the thing that just impressed the shit out of me. You know, he was already a good friend by that point, but he became an excellent friend that day. So, yay for Jay. Make yourself comfortable. We'll get you working.
Thank you.
Go, girl.
You got it.
Now I will.
This is a challenge.
Yeah, no, we'll take it off this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the gentleman who helped me get up the steps. It was a challenge. Hopefully, this was the hardest part of the night. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeff, and I am Jay's brother-in-law. I have been part of the Jaworski family for 19 years, and I can honestly say I didn't know Jay. I think in the first 17 years, we said hi, made small talk a couple of times, but I didn't know him. You know, when I'd be back home, people would say, "Do you have any relatives?" I would say, "Yeah, I have a couple of brother-in-laws. One lives in San Francisco. I think he's a step above a homeless person." Sometimes. Yeah.
Well,
So
we actually had it, yeah.
about 2 years ago, I had the pleasure of being on a cruise with Jay. And we actually sat down and talked. And I was like, wow, I was really excited. He talked to me, and I talked to him. And I got to know him just a little bit. And I kept saying, "Lynn, why don't we invite your brother out here? Why don't we, when your brother's coming out for Austin City Limit, invite him?" And we would always invite him, but he would do his own thing and not come by. And so I still didn't get to know him. And then to hear all the stories about Jay as a person, I can only say a couple of things. One is, I was wrong. He's not a step above a street person. And he had a part of him that I never would have imagined. And I am sorry that I didn't get to know that part of him. And so being here allows me to hear the stories, to hear what he was like, and to say, you know what? I miss my brother-in-law. Thank you.
Dave, no, I don't have to go next. Kim, Dave, Reneker, Colleen.
It's got to be a chameleon story you can tell.
I don't have any chameleon stories. No.
I don't have any chameleon stories.
here
I don't
you
have
go.
any stories.
I don't have, I'm not going
I don't have any stories at all.
to. Okay, is that better for you?
Like, give me that thing. Everybody's, I don't know, it seems really short, and I can't talk short because I have a lot to say. I don't know. Okay, my name's Kaylani. I met Jay when I was 17 years old, and at Redlands, University of Redlands. I was a freshman, and he was a transfer student. And I can't remember that part at all. But somehow, we started having adventures together with these Johnstonians. And I feel like I need to tell you a little bit about Johnston, because Johnston has made some of us a lot of who we are. And I don't think I wondered this before, because I've wondered a million things in this past month that I've never wondered before. I've never wondered if Jay was this person before Johnston, because Johnston kind of made us. And Johnston was about adventure, and you seize that moment, and you find that crazy, like whatever it is, and you go there. And you get it, and you do it, and you live it, and you feel it. And And we were taught that by the graduates, and we would regularly have our adventures. We'd go to Los Angeles to experience these experiences of psychedelics and rock and roll and craziness, whatever it was we could get into and whatever craziness would happen. And I left Johnston before Jay did. And I moved to San Francisco and got into rock and roll because that was what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do rock and roll. This was a great place. I moved here in 1989, and it was a great place for rock and roll. And I lived here, and I got involved with KUSF. I don't know how I found KUSF, but I found KUSF, and I did my deeds. I did my graveyard shift, and I worked my way up into a daytime shift, and I got into the promotions. I had a title. I think I even have business cards still from then. I forgot to wear my T-shirt. Okay, so, and then one day I was on Upper Haight Street at a pizza place, and I bumped into Jay. There's Jay, my good friend from college. He was living in his van, and he had been living in San Francisco. He had a job. And he had been living in San Francisco for at least a month at that point. And I happened to have room in my apartment, so I was like, that's silly, come live with me. And so he came to live with me, and we were in a situation where we were moving out of this place, and we found a place on Lower Haight Street, which some people remember our experiences in that apartment. And Jay said, I'm really curious about this thing you're doing at the radio station. Yeah, I really think I want to get involved with the radio station. So what do I have to do? I'm like, you just need to go to this meeting. So I guess Jake got involved with the radio station. I left San Francisco. I actually left where we lived. We had lots of adventures here while we were in San Francisco. There were a lot of psychedelics. It was good to do psychedelics with Jay. One of my finest memories is a trip very soon after he moved into my apartment in San Francisco here. We're here. For some reason, it was Reno. And part of Johnston, too, was like going on these places, go places, So that was part of our mentality. We have to go somewhere. We have to do this, Very Hunter S. Thompson inspired. We went to Reno in his van. I remember and then Jay and I, we were driven by this Johnston philosophy, and a lot of times other people would just kind of fall to the wayside because it was like, Johnson, you gotta go. And we go, we're Black Sabbath, ride the van. And then other people, they'd fall asleep, and poodles, dancing in the rings, and go to the beach in the waves, all kinds of stuff. So I left San Francisco, and similar, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have emails. I guess we did kind of have emails, but it wasn't like it is now where we Facebook everything, but so we'd always lose touch. And so Jay and I didn't keep in touch. I did all kinds of sorts of things, and I ended up in Eugene, Oregon, and I started a rock band. And then I needed Jay again, because Jay's in San Francisco, and he's still doing KUSF, and he's DJing. So I was able to get in touch with him because he was still at KUSF. So then back with Jay, And this time it was touring adventures. You know, my band would come in and Jay and I would still rally. And Jay supported my band at that point. We did an interview on KUSF, and of course he played my album on KUSF, and then he did like a show on his little rooftop on his garage, had like a little rooftop, and we did a gig there. And so we were still very intertwined, and the Meow Meows, you know, I slept in one of their puke one time. The rock and roll. And then this decade, I became a mom, and I still live in Eugene. I've been living in Eugene for a long time, and this time it was Jay coming to me and wanting to come to Eugene and starting to think about leaving San Francisco, and he was exploring where did he want to go. And he wanted to experience Eugene has a very hippie festival. Eugene is very influenced by Ken Kesey. Ken Kesey is a big figure there. And the Merry Pranksters, and that energy is really strong in Eugene, Oregon. And the country fair has that strong energy. And it's a perfect place for Jay. It's a perfect place for Jay. And so we were really lucky the first year. We got a free pass for you. You can come and you can camp and you can do the whole, like, what would be backstage deal, you know. And so he came and did that, and then he was kind of hooked, and he kept coming. And so Jay was a part of my life again in my 40s, and he became a part of my family life. And Jay loved Eugene, and he said, this is it. I want to come here. I want to come live here and be in Eugene. And so we started making plans about Jay moving to Eugene. And then this thing happened last month, and my whole mind has been shifted, and I realize I don't have any other friends in my life that have been with me when I was a teenager, when I was in my 20s, when I was in my 30s, and when I was in my 40s. And Jay's the only person who has been with me through every one of those decades. And I've realized so many things about Jay. Because I always loved Jay, because he was part of my origins of, you know, these things that I learned about adventure and about approaching life in this adventurous way. And we were still doing that. We were in our 40s and we still had those strong beliefs. But Jay wasn't an easy friend to have. He pushed boundaries. He pushed boundaries. He didn't care, you know. His Jayness was very important. And the stories he had to tell, and the questions he had in his mind, and they were very important. And so, you know, who cares that you have to cook dinner? Like, I have to keep talking to you about this thing, and, you know, yeah, your baby's crying, but, you know, have another beer, and, you know. So it took a little breath to have Jay with me. And this month that has happened now has showed me how, like, so what, you know, so what if it took a breath? Like, maybe he's possibly the most loyal person I have. I have a lot more to say. It's not over yet. I realized in that boundary pushing that he does, it pushed me to set boundaries. You know, I had to set boundaries with Jay to be able to be his close friend. And he always honored that. And Jay, you gotta take a shower. This is fucking ridiculous. I don't think I have another friend in my life who wouldn't just walk out the door when I yelled at them about taking a shower, you know, but Jay would wait a few hours before he took the shower. And then when he took the shower, Kalani, you were right. That was a great shower. And I've realized in this last month how much he accepted me, and he accepted me in ways that no one else has accepted me. He accepted this harshness that I have, and he loved it. He appreciated it. He wanted it. He wanted me, those boundaries. He wanted me to tell him the truth. And he was grateful. He was grateful that I gave him the truth. And I've been thinking about today, and I've been thinking about us all honoring Jay. And I feel that if we want to honor Jay, that you need to go out to the street and you need to talk to a crazy person. And you need to listen to that crazy person. Listen to them. Not think they're silly, but listen to that crazy person. And walk away with a message that is going to help you in your life. And if we're going to honor Jay, then you need to push some boundaries and not give a fuck. Just go for that adventure and feel the light and dance in it and love it. And don't fucking care about what everyone thinks. There, that's it.
Hey everybody. Oh, thanks. My name's Mike. I've known Dave. Wow. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I've known Jay for almost 40 years. There's a group of 5 of us over here from Troy who knew him for a long, long time. And it's one of those things where I think a lot of you probably have friends like this where you know them and maybe you lose touch with them for a while and then you see them again and it's just like, yeah, it was just like right there again. Like you're just there, you're friends, you're owning it. It's just, you're back to where you always were with that person. So there's a group of us that we talked a lot about all the things that Jay, all the memories come flooding back. You start to think about all these kind of crazy stuff, and probably Carl and Sylvia, I don't want to tell a lot of stories, but one in particular, he came to my wedding, and we got a little toasty. And it was about, 3 in the morning, and there was some pizza thrown, and then there was some banging on my door of my hotel room, and I almost got thrown out of the hotel. And then he slept in the cemetery next door, I think next to Ben Franklin's grave is in Boston. And so the next morning, he had some leaves on his hair, and he came into the elevator, and my wife was in there with my mother-in-law, and he just steps in the elevator. He's like, "Hello, hello," and my wife's like, "Oh God, please, don't say anything." And so he got off. He's like, "Okay, yeah," and she got off with her mother-in-law, and her mother like, who do they let in here? Who is that? Like, why do they let people like that in here? I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, that's the story of Jay in a nutshell.
Hello. I just want to say thank you for everyone coming. And I was trying to think of things to say about Jay when he was younger, and I said, well, he left home at 19, and he came here, and he has wonderful friends. And the things I remember, though, is that most recently he would go on his rants, which probably most of you know about on Facebook. And we had no clue what he was talking about. And a lot of his close friends didn't have a clue either, but later on they would find in a song or something that he would joke or say something, and they would get it. We never got it. We never got it, okay? So, and then he got on to the rant with Trump. And you all know that rant. And he got on, and he was talking to me, and I was just, yeah. And after about a year of it, one day I said, well, Jay, how do you know that I voted for Trump? And he said, huh? He says, well, why did you? And I says, no. He says, why didn't you tell me? And I says, you never ask. And he says, He said, I got to think about that. And then we started to have different discussions afterwards. When we found out he passed, and David and I came here, and we were cleaning out his apartment, we found a lot of stuff about Jay. We thought he was disorganized, and like his niece said, that he was more like a street person, right? Well, what we found out is that he was organized. Not in a way you and I might be organized, but he had things in writing. But you may have a notebook, like his sister, when she swam, she had details every day of what they were going to do. Swim, study, whatever. Jay had part of an envelope over here that said things to do, and over here was a notebook on the back of something else said, I have to do this at his job, and over here, 10 feet away was something else, okay? But it was organized, but in his way, not our way. So we're going through his apartment, and we're trying to clean it out, and we go into his bedroom, where it was filled with records and tapes and probably 1,000 books. And a bed that hadn't been slept in for 4 years. And a desk the last thing on a desk was 2014. So we asked his roommate, what is this? And she says, I don't know. So we said, what do you mean you don't know? And she says, I've lived with him for 2.5 years, and I've never seen the room. She said he always said it was his private room. She couldn't go in there. And I says, well, did he sleep in the bed? And she says, never. He slept on a couch, a beat-up old couch. I said, why does he do that? He says, because he figured out right away he has these 2 cats with claws. And if he slept in the bedroom, everything would be shredded. So because he loved these cats so much, he slept on the couch with the cats on top of him. That was Jay. And then he calls one day, he's talking to his brother, and he says, Mom and Dad, they got these other views and everything else, and I've got different views. And he says, I've decided that if I die, I'm disowning them. And David said, well, what are you going to do? He says, I'm giving my stuff to the cats. And he said, but not everything. He says, just the money. So David says, well, what are you going to do with everything else? He says, I'm going to give it to you and your sister. He says, I know it's going to take you 2 to 3 years to go through everything. And he says, and I'll be laughing for 2 to 3 years because it's going to destroy your minds. He said, but at the end, you're going to know everything about me. So David's thinking, I got to take all this stuff back. And he said, I'll be laughing. You're going to take it back across country. You probably have to quit your job to go through this stuff. So then we're cleaning out his apartment, and most of his clothes that he wore to work was out in the living room or where he slept, and it was in bags. And, whether or not he washed them, I don't know. we find this closet. And in the closet, on hangers, are all these clothes that Mom and Dad gave him for gifts. He never liked what we gave him, but he wouldn't return them. And I'm looking at this stuff, and I noticed that when he was here last time, he wore that shirt. And they were all on hangers. Everything was on a hanger. When he came to visit us, usually he would shave, and he'd wear these clothes. And when he'd leave, he'd take them back to the apartment, put them on a hanger for the next year, and rewear them without. That's what he did. And he had 2 different departments of clothes. The ones on the hangers, which he never wore over here, which we saw all the time because he's gonna make sure his parents think that he dresses that way. And then what he wears here. In the middle of all these clothes was a clown suit with a mask. We could never figure out what that was doing in the closet, but it was there. Afterwards, this last week, David and his roommates, a friend and somebody else, went down to get the cats because all of a sudden we've inherited these cats, and we got to take them back on an airplane. They have to have shots and everything else. And I was interested in trying to get rid of his car, and they're all saying, don't get rid of the car, or get rid of the car, give it away. I said, well, let me spend $85 on the smog test. That's too much money. Well, then I find out what they spend on the cats, and I'm laughing. They got $1,000 tied up before even flying them back, but there's shots and everything else. But when David went to get the cats, and it took him 2 hours to catch the cats in a small 800-foot apartment. And when he caught them, they were proud of themselves until it dawned on them they had claws. And it was Freddy Krueger going through the cardboard and the paper, just trashing everything before they could catch the cats. So, they finally took care of that, and they're going to take care of the cats as they promised. Yesterday, at his birthday, and he was born at 7:38, we sang happy birthday. We stayed until maybe 10:30, 11, Sylvia and I. A lot of people left beforehand. My son David, who always wanted to get everything in the morning and get the van and the storage unit and everything else, we find out today, we sent a thing, we're going to breakfast, and this was like 8:30. He shows up for breakfast at 12:30, him and his wife. So what happened? Well, we were told to leave the bar at 2:30. I said, how were you told? He said, the bartender came up and he says, I don't care if you're Jay's brother or not, we got to go home. So, every like you said, everyone's saying, and Jay was always an adventure. And one of his friends was telling, and he lived with, that Jay lived with him for a while, and they lived a house off the corner street, and the corner had a light. And I says, what was it like living with Jay? And he says, well, when you left in the morning, you wanted to do something, you'd go down the bottom stairs, you would turn left to go to the street corner, and he said it was always an adventure. I said, what do you mean? He said, sometimes that 40 feet was 15 seconds, other times it was an hour and a half with Jay. Because Jay would start talking, and he said it took forever to walk 15 to 20 feet with Jay, because it was an adventure. He'll be missed. Thank you very much. Sylvia and I, we came, we wanted this because we saw on Facebook how many friends he had, and we wanted to meet everybody, and thank you.
Colleen? Let's just keep talking.
So I do want to talk. Jay, that's why we're all here. I talk for a living, but this makes me really super, super nervous. I've known Jay for a long time. I knew Jay for a long time. I want to say that I was special, but I think we're all special because we were all special to Jay. And can we say Jay was special? I think Jay was special. And I have one tiny little story to share. I've got so many stories. So we were together for a long time, off and on for many, many years. One story. So we all went to, Kaylani talked about the University of Redlands and the Johnston Center and how formative that was in all of our lives. And that's so, so, so true. So Johnston Center like made us who we are and brought us all together. And a lot of us are here tonight to honor Jay. And so one thing that was really funny to Jay and I is what always happened. You know, we went to so many Dead shows together, traveled up and down the coast, across the country so many times together. I lived with Carl and Sylvia and a family in Troy, Michigan for a summer. But one thing that really like made us laugh all the time was that whenever we said we went to the University of Redlands, everybody would say, "Oh, you know, Northern California, the redwoods, that's so beautiful, right?" Everybody said that, and we'd be like, "No, no." So one time, Jay and I were traveling up and down the coast for some reason, and we're like, "Let's go visit the College of the Redwoods. Let's go figure out where that college is. Like, let's go see it, right? It's probably really cool." So we drive over there, and you know, we got really super lost. There were probably some psychedelics involved in this whole escapade. And we got really lost, and we ended up like wandering around looking at all this beautiful rural scenery in the redwoods. And we ended up like sleeping in his car, in his Mustang, for a couple hours from like dawn until about 9 a.m. And then at 9 a.m., the farmer, we happened to be sleeping right in front of the gate, like a farmer's gate. And so he came up to us and he knocked on the car, on the window of the car, and he brought us a thermos of coffee. And he said, "Hey, do you guys need some coffee?" And we drank the coffee, and in about 15 minutes, he's like, "And also, could you move your car?" We're like, so I want to say, like, for me, my Jay, the Jay, like, he attracted chaos, but he also attracted kindness as much as anything else. And I love that part of Jay, and I think we all know that part of Jay. And so, yeah, I'm so glad to be here to honor Jay tonight. Thank you.
My name is Natalie. I joined KUSF in 1999. And I met Jay and the whole gang. And I became, after 2 years, I became the producer of a show on Sunday called Spotlight. And Spotlight was a theme show. A theme like all those posters. Themes about music. Themes about experimental life, and Jay was the core of this show. And he will have so many ideas, and we spoke about a lot of those ideas, but he could never give me a date. And I had to work on a calendar, and I had a deadline with dates, but he will never give me a date. But knowing the chaotic self he was, I always saved him a date. And he will come calling or texting on the computer. We had no phones yet. And he will say, "I missed the deadline." And I said, "No, you did not. I saved you the date." So then he had to work on the theme. And themes in Jay's world. Imagine the themes, because he was a musical genius. He had tons of ideas. And he's the only one, we French people do not understand the Grateful Dead. Now I know. I know. I don't know if they do, but I know. And then the deadline will come to do the theme because we had to print it. It's, if you see the magazines of the KUSF, it's in the back. And he was always had a show. And to the last printing moment, he will change his theme. And I will always be extremely patient to let him explore and give me at the last minute of the printing a new spotlight, a new change, a new theme, and there was always a new theme. It was my favorite theme. And stereo. So he will be greatly missed. Music festivals, music concerts will never be the same, but he will be with us. Thank you all, the family. You are very special to me. And thank you all our friends and his friends. And the cosmos. Hallelujah.
Hello, so this is Jay's niece, Ruby. She's a little bit shy and timid. You want it? She just wanted everybody to know that she misses her Uncle Jay and that she considered him a second dad. And they texted and talked for hours and hours and hours, multiple times a week. And she just wanted everybody to know that she is taking Jay's cats and really is excited. Right? Say anything. You want somebody to say something? Okay, she's a little bit shy, but she just wanted everybody to know. Meow, meow.
Back up. Thank you. I'm Brian J. Springer. I was the last program coordinator at KUSF, and after this guy. When I started in 2001, Jay wasn't the music director then, but Jay became the music director quickly after. And I mean, I know there's a lot of family here, and this is just beautiful to be here, but it's interesting to sort of give some of you a perspective of him as a colleague. He took crazy and took it to a level and consistently kept it at a level that somehow it just didn't drive you crazy, but kept you phenomenally entertained. And I remember that clown suit. I mean, I was at the Warfield one night, and just this evil clown comes running at me and was like, "I'm gonna beat your..." Guess all the words, they were all being used. Put it this way, all the words that we couldn't use on the radio were all being flown at me, which somehow that was hilarious to him. But I dropped my drink. I was like, who the hell are... I had a couple drinks, so I was in a horror movie myself. I was like, I'm dreaming, this isn't real. And then he's like, no, it's Jay, haha. And I'm like, that's just not funny at all. And I don't think I really enjoyed the rest of the night, but I am just left with this phenomenal respect for this man. He was just a genius. In fact, I've often called people like Jay, just in my terminology, the tortured minds of the world, because they're like Cassandras. Like, other people just don't understand him so much. And I was glad he had us, in some degree, to at least forgive him on a lot of levels and that's kind of, not to make this about KUSF, but he was a great reason why I understood KUSF and why I believed in KUSF, because so part of being, actually, Josh Wilson can attest, part of being program coordinator is you're sort of like the HR. Thank God we did not have an HR, to be clear. No money was involved. So I would constantly get these complaints because Jay would come into the studio at like 3:30 in the morning after being at a bar, And there'd always be like some 18-year-old DJing who was forced to do the graveyard shift. And Jay would just come, one night he came in and just took the record off the record player and was like, "You can't play Dave Matthews on this radio station." And he would just come back. He's like, "Here, put this on if as if your life depended on it, because it does." And this poor person would just be terrified because you think you're in this secure area that wouldn't allow, but like he looked like the person that wouldn't have gotten through security, but somehow he had his own card to get in there. And after just berating said person, and this was not a singular incident, there were several of these, but still there was no way we were going to extricate him from our family. It was more like, yeah, that's just something you're going to have to get used to if you want to stay here. He would then take 2 chairs and sleep on those 2 chairs in the most uncomfortable position I've ever seen in my life. But then the morning person would always come in and just, "Oh, Jay's sleeping on 2 chairs." But again, I have to say that I was astounded and repetitively entertained by his talent, his craft. Single-handedly the best DJ in the entire world. He was a walking encyclopedia, and I'm sort of a geeky thing for me, but just his cueing, his ability to beat match and make the whole thing smooth. And again, somebody else you brought up the Grateful Dead. He's the only person that could have pulled off playing the Grateful Dead on KUSF. Somehow he made it cool. I mean, and I remember one time distinctly he said, "It's the definitive American band," and I never thought about it. It really is and Jay made me see that. But the final story I want to leave you all with, which I think is one of the funniest, was we used to have our music meetings on Wednesdays, and we would all sit and listen to all the music, and he was the music director at the time. I think I don't even know what led up to this, but Jay just finally turned around to all of us very profoundly, and he said, and I told Steve this the other night, "I think it's really funny that any of you think that you have any say in what goes on the air in this radio station. I choose everything." And if we didn't lose like 20 people as a result of that speech, it would have been a way cooler. But again, he weeded out the weak and kept us strong. And you will always be here, and you will always be on our station. We put a sign up on the window of the station we are building now. We did a memorial for him. So please, if you come by the new station, do whatever you do to just remember the man, because I will never forget him. He lives right here.
Hey, I'm Neil. I worked with Jay 2 times in my career, once at a rock club and once as a stagehand. And that's one thing I'd like to address. We're hearing a lot about the freewheeling Jay, and I just want to tell you as parents, as far as I knew him, you instilled in that boy a really strong sense of hard work. And that's one side we haven't heard, but I don't know a single stagehand here who wouldn't be filled with a sense of relief when they walked into a job and saw him on the crew. Jay was on point at work. He delivered. And of course, I worked with him at a rock club too. And does anybody want to hear about the time that I took a punch for Jay? So Jay was working sound, and this is when we were just starting into getting to being stagehands, and we were still working at a rock club, and we were completely over it. Both of us were just sick and tired of the entire thing. Hemlock Tavern. Jay was doing sound, and the manager was a little upset that he would just level out the equalizer at the end of the night instead of just leaving it EQ'd for the room. So we'd hear a lot about that. But one night, I'm bartending, and one night I walk into the smoking room, which is an adjacent room in San Francisco because you're not allowed to smoke in the bar. And we have just called last call, and we're trying to get everybody out of there. And Jay is wrestling with a rather large woman over a beer that he's trying to take away from her. And it looks like he's losing. So I need to jump in and help. And so I do so. I'm right there with him, my comrade, and I'm in the struggle to help this woman put down her beer and get out. And all of a sudden, Jay's a ghost. He's nowhere to be seen. One of this woman's companions, I guess, who brought her out that night, sees me, makes a beeline for me, and pushes me against the wall, and I'm able to talk him down from any further violence, and I'm escorting them both to the door, and I'm pretty sure it was Jay who shouted my name when I had them close to the door, and I turned to respond, and this woman clocks me. Like, it was the only time I'd ever been punched at the hemlock, and finally got them out, and I go in the back, and Jay's counting money from the night or something, and he's like, "Oh, you look like you had it, man." But anyway, I would take an ass kicking from several of those ladies if Jay were here tonight to see this, because he'd be proud.
Who can tell the Kurt Cobain story?
I don't know it.
Barry, you were there.
All right, Jay's famous for the Kurt Cobain story at KUSF, but I heard a really great one from Eric, who just left. To make this family friendly, let's just say they were out gallivanting, and they just happened to break into the drama department at Lone Mountain USF. And they found their way into the costume room, and Jay found a nice jester outfit to put on the cap and the whole jester suit. And they continued gallivanting about town with Jay in the jester suit. So that's my favorite story. Anyway, the Kurt Cobain incident happened. Kurt died in 1994. And Jay was really, really broken up about that. He was a huge Nirvana fan, and the fact that Kurt ended his life was really tragic for Jay. So the next time he did his show, he decided to somehow go out with a bang and turn off the transmitter. So he played a huge Kurt Cobain set, ended it with "Fuck you, Kurt Cobain, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you." And he tried to turn off the transmitter, and he knew he was committing suicide. He was being a kamikaze for his the right to express his angst over Kurt Cobain. So he tried to turn off the transmitter but failed, and then you can hear me, who ran the office at the same time, walking into the station being, "What the fuck are you doing, Jay, you fucking asshole?" So not only did he get in trouble for yelling "fuck you" on the air, but took me down with him. So that's my Jay. But anyway, Miss Jay, he was my neighbor since I moved into Lower Haight in 1991. Luckily, Kaylani was across the street with Jay, and they had a stoop and I didn't, so we used to hang out all the time. And he drove me nuts, but loved the guy. So that's your Kurt Cobain story.
But a testament to Jay's magnetic personality and charisma is, despite that incident, when he returned to KUSF around 1999, early 2000s, he was actually allowed to work in the KUSF business office. And I was talking to him one time when we were hanging out at Knock Knock, which was the bar that I worked at. And he was talking about somebody overhearing a conversation of somebody at the office that went to the office and they needed something. And he's like, I think they were talking about me, because they asked him, "Well, who did you talk to last time you came to the office?" And they said, "I don't know, some grumpy, smelly guy." But another time when Jay was like distraught and he was talking to me, and I said to him, "Jay, you're the grumpy, smelly guy. No one can mess with you. Be proud. Own it." That's that song.
Hey everyone, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Roberto, and I had the privilege of calling Jay my best friend. I'm sure a lot of people did. I don't don't really have any particular stories that I want to share about him because everybody who knew him had a handful of stories, and I think they were all little gifts that he gave us, like the trail of beers or his stories when he was traveling around the world, camping in Australia on the beach, and he woke up and he was wrestling a loaf of bread from a dingo. That was just Jay. That was a good story. A lot of times I hear the term somebody was larger than life. I think Jay really was larger than life. He left us with, man, I can't even describe, like he was actually a positive influence on my life. I don't know how that happened, but Jay was a great guy, and I just wanted to, for anybody who has a drink in their hand, I just wanted to raise my glass and say, cheers to Jay. To Jay.
Then I'll be a grumpy, not smelling guy.
I'm just really sad to meet his family this way because you're all really amazing. And I think a lot of us have had such an amazing pleasure to meet you guys, and you're all so fantastic and so wonderful. And I'm so sorry that we have to meet you this way because you guys are so special. So thank you for sharing Jay with us, and thank you for being so great. And I'm so sorry.
No. I guess I've knew Jay for almost 20 years. I've worked at the Warfield in the Fillmore here for over 30 years, and Jay was a co-worker here. In fact, the last time I saw him here, he was doing what Christine is doing right now. And you know what? He did it with style. And, this is I met Jay before where there was the big Another Planet and the whole multiple promoters in the Bay Area, and we all pretty much, if you worked at the Fillmore and the Warfield as a stagehand, those of us who had been around for a while, we put you through the ringer. And any of you who worked with me at that time, you know what I'm talking about. And Jay was one of those people. He fit right in. He was quirky, he was crazy, and you know what? Everybody who does this, that's the prerequisite, because you can't do this unless you're a maniac. And Jay was one of those kind of people where, like, when you needed him, he always kind of came through for you. I remember the countless gigs here in just the last year where I needed an extra stagehand at the last second and called the hall, and who shows up but Jay Jaworski. And, in the truck, that's what we're looking for. Like, are you going to kill me? And, that guy was a success. He was a hard worker. And everybody, I think, who ever met him, he was kind of kooky and kind of zany, but that's like the charm behind it all, right? That's who in this room is not a complete blithering maniac? I'll just leave it at that.
So I think I knew Jay for about 30 years probably, and like a lot of people had a lot of good experiences and fun stuff with him. But he was a handful, as Kaylani pointed out, and you kind of had to have boundaries. I could spend really quality time with Jay in short bursts, and it was always great. In the last 10 years, I think I spent some quality time with him about once a year. So I'm part of the Johnston family with Jay, and a group of us got together at my house last summer, and most of them hadn't seen Jay in 30 years, and I was still in touch with him, and so I called him, and he decided to come up. But I live in Napa. He was in San Francisco, and in classic Jay fashion, he thought about it and worried about it and tried to get his stuff together and tried to figure out what shirt he was going to wear, and finally got himself onto the last ferry out of San Francisco and made it to Vallejo with his bike. And so now he's 20 miles from Napa, and he's got to ride his bike up to Napa. And he is not sure how to get there, even though he's done this before, and he's riding his bike up Highway 29. And he's calling us and saying, you know, I think I see this. Am I on the right track? And yeah, Jay, you're getting here. You're on the right track. And he's, you know, stopping at some intersection and asking directions from people. And he gets turned around at Highway 12 off of 29. If people have ever been up there, he rode his bike the wrong way all the way over to I-80, which is about 6 miles from Highway 29, and then rode back and then called me and wanted to know if he was, you know, heading the right direction. So he finally makes it to Napa just in time to get some beer before the grocery store closes. And so he's about a mile from my house, and he comes out of riding his bike up to Napa, and he's got his beer, and he has a flat tire. So now he needs a ride. He's a mile from the house, so we go down, we give him a ride, and brought him up there. And so it's just a little story I wanted to share. But the other piece is, when I learned that Jay had died, I thought of anybody I know who could tell me what it's like on the other side, it's Jay. And I really want to know this, and I really thought, like, if I put that out there, you know, maybe he would tell me what it's like on the other side there. And so, in all the time that I knew him, I don't think I ever dreamed about Jay, except for the night after I learned that he had died. And he came to me, and it wasn't that he came to me, he was just in my dream. And it was a setting, and he was in the room, and I saw that he stubbed his toe. And there he was, he stubbed his toe. And we talked for a second, and he told me, it's okay, I just stubbed my toe. Because that's what you do. If you stub your toe, you tell people it was okay. I know everybody knows. But so I just wanted everybody to know that it's okay, he just stubbed his toe.
Totally unprepared story. I joined KUSF when I was 16. Apparently Jay had just done his Kurt Cobain thing, wasn't there for a few years, came back. I was the punk DJ, played all punk all the time. We were required to do 50% current music, 50% whatever you wanted. I said, fuck that, played whatever I wanted. Jay had a problem with that when he joined back to the station. He got really mad. Yelled at Lisa and Steve and said, fuck that, why does Lita get to do whatever the hell she wants? I was 16, so I didn't have to do graveyard, so I got a 10 to midnight shift. After that, got like, I don't know what the hell I did, but during the day, good shift, avoided all the rules. Jay had a problem with that, tried to get me fired. So apparently he likes rules. Yeah. Apparently only Jay can break rules. We would go into, I forget the name of the studio. It was the actual like office where we would sit with the two computers, the fancy MacBooks, workroom. Yeah. I remember when we got those computers, it was a big deal. Like, holy shit, we got a Mac computer. Oh my God. And then we all were downloading all the CDs and stealing all the songs. I would spend hours doing that. But yeah, I remember Jay used to come in there and fight with me all the time. Like, you're such an asshole. You're always getting whatever the hell you want. God damn it. You need to play 50% currents. I was like, your shit sucks, so I'm not going to play it. Add cooler stuff, and then I'll play it. But I remember we would fight all the time, and then midway through fights, I would look at him, and he'd look at me, and we would just start laughing because we didn't know what the hell we were arguing about. That's what I remember about Jay. He was just crazy to be crazy, and then he would just mellow out and think, yeah, I don't know what the hell I'm mad about. All right, never mind, let's smoke some weed. Woo! So, I mean, that was my memory of Jay. And then all these years later, like 2 days before he left, we were messaging. He sent me some stuff. It was really bizarre. Wrote him like, I don't know what the hell you're telling me right now. And it was like a song, like very weird stuff. And he's like, look, don't worry, I'm not mad at you. I love you, okay? All is good. I'm like, okay, cool. Glad all is good. But I don't know. I never know what the hell you're saying to me. And I think you were saying that half the time. Nobody ever knew what the heck he was saying. And then later on down the line, it would be a song. It's pretty much what he wrote me was like lyrics to a song, and I had no idea what the heck he was saying. But yeah, I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, I grew up in San Francisco, and joining KUSF at such a young age, like Jay was the epitome of what I love about San Francisco. Weird, quirky, super temperamental, ups, downs, like intense, but also super big bear, like lovable bear. He was just a rad dude and exactly the type of guy that I remember about San Francisco in general, which... I mean, there are lots of us still here, but Jay would be equal to SF. Like that description is what I think of when I think of my city. So.
I want to say something else about Jay. You were talking about organization before, and we could never figure out what he was doing. But I told you he was organized. After he passed, I was going through trying to find records of like his credit cards. And I found one credit card, which was in Chase Bank, and every purchase was for $14.39 every day. And I couldn't figure out what what is he doing? Safeway, that's exactly right. Safeway, $14.39 every single day. Nothing else on the credit card but $14.39. I figured, what is this? I figured, what kind of food's he buying? And then about a week later, I found another credit card, which was at Amazon. And it was all food. Different kinds of food at restaurants or whatever. But the $14.39 I could never figure out. And finally, somebody told me that was either a 6 or an 8-pack. So he did have compartments where he kept things separate.
Hey, so I had to work underneath of Jay's house, and like he made noise, but we made more. He never complained. He didn't give a rat's butt if like there was a hell of a lot of damn like noise coming up from downstairs, and he kind of considered it his living room. You know, the fact that somebody had a bar downstairs kind of meant that he should just get free beers forever. You know, because of the inconvenience. And that was all right. But the main thing is, Jay did not smell bad. His apartment smelled bad. His bedroom smelled fine. And I slept there like 12 times. And if I got too lit at work and I had to like, chill out 3 or 4 hours before street cleaning before I had to get my ride back home, it was never a problem with Jay. That was cool. And he kept a pretty nice bed in those days. From what his father was saying, it had degenerated maybe a little bit. But he was very, very, beneficial towards like taking care of people in need, wanting his needs taken care of. He didn't like buying anything, and I don't blame him, because his humor was its own avenue of commerce. His humor enough, like, carried you through a work hour. His humor carried you through, like, a doldrum shift. And he could come into the bar, and everyone who was, like, what we'd call today less than desirable. People who were trying to turn, vibrant Victorian housing into condominiums and stuff like that. He would drive everyone except those people out. And the investors, it wasn't very good for the bar, but it was really good for the writing and the sense of humor. And I think everyone should embrace, if you're on Facebook or anything, take pictures of some of his poems. You don't get poets like this every day. And the one-liners he could deliver to somebody who's trying to get through a doldrum shift were invigorating. They were absolutely beautiful. And he didn't smell bad.
Well, I know people want to hear some music and dance to the rock and roll, but I just want to say that the most important thing about Jay was that he introduced me to the best people in San Francisco, and that's why I wanted to do this, because I know he has the best taste in friends and the best taste in music and the best taste in everything. That's what, and he even though I probably drove him crazy, he drove me crazy, but he never left me. He never turned his back on me. I'm like, Jay, I just went through this. Where can I find a party? And he would be like, well, Christine, this is where we go, and we're going to do this for Thanksgiving. We're going to go here. And I mean, he was always there. And that's why I felt like I had to do something when I found out. I just was like, he deserves this. And memorials for people, the degree of which I put energy into something is what I want to remember him this way. I don't want to remember how he was really hating San Francisco at the end. I don't want to remember that, anything bad. I want to remember all the things, like the Chameleon years and the KUSF years and the JK Sound years and the BGP years and everything that, he was, and the hitchhiking and he just was so fearless in a way. And that's what I remember. And I'm really grateful that all the people I've reached out to, they haven't, I have so many new friends now, through Facebook, and everyone who's not on Facebook, I don't get it, but because this is how we connect now. I mean, you're not gonna be exposed or humiliated. You put out what you want. If you wanted to put an alter ego, who cares? That's how I found most of people, through his Facebook. I went through his Facebook posts, and I don't know, I just really appreciate that people actually came out and celebrated him this way and gave what they could. So I just appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, folks, I hope you have a hand on your drink. We'll do a toast to Jay, musically speaking. Any more stories? More stories?
Sorry I'm back, but we need to see fat chicks dancing. I didn't see that before.